had one client, Tony Plana, who's an actor. You've probably seen him a lot. Plays minor roles a lot on TV. He played the Davison role in, El Salvador. When he came to me, he was 25 years old, hooked on cocaine. He had been a real Casanova up to that time. Sex drive went out the window. And that was part of his magnetism, feeling that sexual prowess. So he was reduced as a personality to this timid little individual. And he had always had a teenage body that never matured or developed. Put him on raw foods, got him off of cocaine easily, doing great. In '82, when I started eating raw meat on a daily diet, I suggested that he also eat raw meat on a regular basis, daily basis. Within 2 years, his body was all of a sudden full, just like, he'd been working out a lot. He loved it. And then he went to getting better and better roles in films, until he was, aside Robert Redford and, I forgot what that movie was, what's that little island down there? Cuba. And he got that role, and that was because he looked better. He looked stable. He looked more powerful. And this is just by eating raw meats and all raw foods. But that increased. Now, I had him eating raw foods from 1977 to 1982 with only eating raw meats a couple of times a week. When he started eating it every day, within 2 years, he was fully matured and developed. And he was already, 32? When he started eating raw meats on a daily basis. So by the time he was 34, his body was able to develop because it got the proteins it needed. Finally, after 20 years of experimenting with all these foods, I felt, hey, I'm on to something here. So I sat down and spent 5 years writing the book called We Want to Live. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to bore anybody with a lot of facts and a lot of information about nutrition in a stale way. I'd write it in a story form, tell my story, tell other case examples within the story. And when I finished that, my editor said, you can't do this. You can't give that information and not give at least some clues how people can help themselves with this diet. You can have people upset. So I wrote volume 2 of the book. That took me longer than volume 1. It took me almost 3 years to write the second part. It covers over 200 common diseases and thousands of remedies, raw food remedies, to reverse those conditions. What I want to caution everybody is that Rome wasn't built in a day, and when you reconstruct something, it takes time to disassemble it, to reassemble it. So even though your ailments may seem to get better right away, it still takes a long time to completely reverse and heal. Let me give you an example. I had the radiation that affected my spine. Up until a month ago, the furthest I could bend my back, because it cauterized. That radiation is a high temperature element. That's not exactly, but it will help you understand. High temperature element that causes like clay to fuse and become hard. Does that to the bones. So I'd always been restricted on bending back this far. This is as far as I could bend back after the chemotherapy, the radiation. I went through a spinal meningitis about a month ago, started a month ago. Also meningitis. So I had spinal meningitis and meningitis. Now the doctors will freak you out and say, if you have meningitis or spinal meningitis, you'll be like polio, you'll be crippled, you'll be stupid for life. So if I listen to them, I'll poison myself with lots of antibiotics to kill that bacteria, the meningi, and then what happens? I'll be well, of course. It doesn't work like that, does it? So I completely ignore them. I went through spinal meningitis and meningitis for 19 days. I was crippled in bed for 2 days. I could barely move. The pain was excruciating all throughout my spine, down to my knees, coughing up tons of mucus. I had a beach towel that I filled with mucus for that 19 days. And got rid of lots of poisons in that time. And then all of a sudden I said, well, now I've got the test. Here, did I get better or did I get worse? Did I get stupid? You know? And now I can go back that far. That's a tremendous arch where I wasn't able to do it before. I could strain and only get that far before. So the disease is the cure, as long as you're feeding yourself properly. Don't be afraid of pneumonia. Don't be afraid of meningitis. Don't be afraid of gonorrhea. Don't be afraid of any of those. Just means that you have toxicity in that area of your body, and it will help it remove. Now, to prove that, I had in certain circumstances, I had the cases of polio, a person with polio in there. As long as her poliomyelitis was prominent and a high amount of it in her blood, she healed. As long as she was with the medical profession and taking, people got well. When the bacteria went low, people did not progress. So the lab person did some experiments with the byproducts in the body when the bacteria levels were high. Found that normally if somebody has an area of their body that requires a dissolution of tissue, your body forms solvents from fats and alcohols that your body will make from carbohydrates. Take those solvents and it'll dissolve that tissue or that debris. The byproduct of that is almost identical to turpentine. Highly toxic in the body. They used to give turpentine for certain conditions, which is like giving, strychnine, to help poison the condition out of your system. But what that does, it poisons the system, so it stops that detox in that area because they have to deal with that poison that's going into the body. Hold on a minute. When the bacteria was present, that turpentine-like substance was minuscule. Yet the same amount of dissolution of tissue occurred. If parasites were involved, there was hardly any toxicity at all as a byproduct of the parasites eating that decaying tissue. Their excrement was 1/100th less toxic than that solvent byproduct turpentine in the system. So, you got parasites? Give them to me. I'll take them. I like parasites. I like bacteria. I'll take them all. And like I said, because I had the vagotomy pyeloplasty, which means they severed the vagus nerve to my stomach, I had no hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid is not your savior from bacteria, as the doctors and nurses like to postulate. E. coli, Salmonella, trichinosis, Campylobacter, all of those that they're pointing the finger at, it's like pointing the finger at the vulture and the crow and the worms. They didn't create that decaying tissue that they're eating. They didn't kill that animal, that creature that they're eating. They're preventing the planet from becoming a gaseous, toxic cesspool. So pointing the finger at those bacteria and those parasites is absolutely absurd. If you have decay in your body, well, let them do the work. Stop eating the things that are creating decay in your body that require the bacteria. then the parasites that don't go along with feeling good. And nobody, if they're going through, a major detox, is going to feel well. But that's all part of the process of getting well. And I tell everybody, your body's like New York City. It's been around a long time. It needs replumbing. It needs, everything. So you take it apart piece by piece, and you put it back together piece by piece. It takes a long time. I keep getting healthier every year. I'm 51 now. It's fantastic. It doesn't stop. But I know that I still can be healthier. When I can bend back and touch the floor, I'll know that I've gotten to where I want to get, health-wise. So healing and regeneration is a lifetime process. But it's better to go toward health than to go away from it. So it's your choice.
You were talking about major detoxifications that look like diseases. Well, if a person was, say, like 80% raw, let's say they were doing an occasional cooked meal still, how would they know whether it was something clearing out, like a retracing, or
something that they're eating in that 20% bad?
Right, exactly.
Well, when something is deep-seated, a pathological condition in your body, that's from a long time ago. Let's say you're getting nauseous, low in energy, even fatigue for a period of time, that could be from what you're eating at present. If you're eating 80%, your body has enough nutrients to keep up with any amount of toxicity that's going to be created, so it won't cause degeneration unless you're poisoning yourself with something real serious, like salt, too much salt, or too much of any drug, chemical that can damage the system.
So in general, if it's not like a really bizarre thing coming out, then you look more towards the 20%. If it's fatigue or something.
Right, yeah. Or nausea, or irritability.
You're wrong in that case. Your meat and your fat.
It's just best to do that because the amount of toxicity that's formed from raw fats is tremendous. The lipid oxides that are formed, and they're carcinogenic when they collect in a body for 40 to 60 years. And you have the protein toxins that are formed from your cooked meats too. So it's basically true. Cooked meats, meats are poison when cooked, but when they're not cooked, they're just the opposite. Yes?
On the Ebola, which basically, I guess, liquefies the organs before the body dies, what transpires in that process that causes?
Well, I haven't directly studied it, so I'll just have to theoretically approach, or broach the question. Ebola is similar to, from my limited investigation of it, is similar to mushrooms come from mycelium. Very similar to that. The mycelium Ebola is mycelium of the human system. Mycelium in plants goes around and melts dead roots. Ebola can go through your system and cause a melting of all tissues that have hardened, like cirrhosis of the liver or multiple sclerosis. A lot of people have a lot of drying networks of veins that have actually blocked and built up and hardened. Just like your colon can become impacted. The veins and arteries and systems and capillaries are so blocked that they actually close off. Then your body will grow veins in and around. If Ebola gets in there, from what I understand, it can melt all the old tissue. But if what you have in your body is nothing healthy, you're going to melt your whole system. Anywhere where there's decaying or hard tissue. Of course, again, the end product of Ebola is less toxic than any other kind of body solvent-related toxicity. It is still tremendous. So Ebola is not that I would not. I would say I'd stay away from that bacteria until you got really well. Yes.
Then what causes, people, you read cases about people getting E. coli, getting sick and dying, and undercooked meat, and these children in the swimming pool, and,
They're pointing the finger at the wrong thing. Like the 124, 25 people with the Jack-in-the-Box incident. That meat was cooked.
That's right.
It was cooked. It was not raw.
Wasn't it undercooked, though?
You can say undercooked. E. coli, according to science, is destroyed at 197 degrees, 179 degrees, something like that, incapacitated. If you take a hamburger as thick as Jack-in-the-Box makes it, and you throw it on the grill for as long as they do it, even 15 seconds, it reaches that temperature, unless it's frozen. Doesn't make any difference. It's cooked at a high enough temperature that it's not going to be the same. Now, if you take that hamburger that you've cooked, and let's say it's really raw in the center, and you let it sit for 24 hours, that E. coli that forms is not a natural E. coli. It's like me taking a herd of elephants, burning the hell out of them, and watch them stampede. They will wreak havoc because they're no longer a stable, balanced creature. So it'll storm through the body. Raw E. coli is not a problem. If it were, the Eskimos and the cavemen would have been dead, and man would never be around. E. coli is 99% of the bacteria in your intestines. Without it, you could not manufacture your B vitamins, nor synthesize your amino acids. You would have no immune system without the E. coli in your colon. They are just wanting to point the finger at somebody other than the chemicals, other than the process of your cooking foods. They're about manufacturing. The medical profession is about drugging. They don't want to point the finger at themselves, the creators of it. They're going to point the finger at anything natural that they can. It's like, let's say you go into Beverly Hills. There's been a big robbery, and there are a bunch of black people on the street. Who do you think is going to get blamed? That's basically what the medical profession and science are doing. They're just pointing the finger at the vultures, the crows, and the worms.
Then what's making
people sick?
Yeah.
The toxicity that collects from cooked foods or from chemicals, preservatives, pesticides. Let's say you get a pinhead worth of chemicals, let's say preservative, in a week's period. To a system that has no good immune system, that can cause a poisoning of a particular area of the body, let's say in the liver or the intestines. Let's say it destroys all of that tissue for about the circumference of a quarter. Once that decay goes underway, E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter, depending upon the tissue there, is going to thrive on that tissue. But you don't blame the bacteria that eats up the decay. It's not the fault of the bacteria. It's what caused the decay in the system. And they're not looking at that at all. And yet if you look at the work of Pottinger, with the cats and with humans, feeding them cooked, feeding them raw, great tissue health with raw, disease, and eventual extinction on the cooked. And my work bears out the same stuff, the same results. That it's cooked foods and chemicals that are poisoning people, that are causing these reactions, and they're just blaming it on the bacteria. I mean, why does syphilis come out? Why does poliomyelitis come out? If you observe that tissue, it's because that tissue is having a problem. There's a decay in that tissue. So why then is the bacteria the problem? It's not. Yes?
It's on another topic. Red meat, I've heard about phosphorus and about creating acidity in the body and thus pulling calcium from the bones, which is of major concern to women in osteoporosis.
In cooked meat, that is very true. Raw meat is not.
So there have actually been tests on this, real rigorous science that shows that this is the case. It's cooked.
Well, I don't know what you call rigorous. If you talk about a university doing it,
Control group.
yes, studies have been done on animals. If you look at Pottinger's work with the 900 cats, you'll see that all of the bones and organs, there was no leaching at all of any of the tissues, including the bone, the cartilage, or the tendons, any of the animals who received completely raw meat. The control groups that ate either some pasteurized milk or some cooked meat or some condensed milk, the different control groups that he experimented with, there was bone disintegration, degeneration in every one of those. But in the raw group, there was none.
Okay, nothing has been done with humans, though, to gauge this.
Well, he did. He did. He was an MD, he could get away with it.
And so we found same results.
The same results,
Gas.
yes. Right. And Price, Dr. Price, who's a dentist, traveled all over the world studying different cultural groups. And because he was a dentist, that's what his focus was on, the teeth and the bones. And what groups had osteoporosis and what groups had, dental caries and which didn't. Now, he didn't focus on raw and cooked. He focused on indigenous people's diet. If they changed their diet, they had problems. But it was mainly toward, cooking more and processing the foods more. But I've seen it, I'll give you an example. Fellow's 56 years old, has maybe 9 teeth left in his mouth, and they all have extensive decay in them, all loose, hanging there. Been a vegetarian for about 15 years, 16 years, maybe 17 years, 15 to 17 years. Went on this raw diet, lots of raw meat. And it's a difficult thing because this guy lives in a house that's vegetarian. So he's not allowed to bring his meat in. He has to go buy it, put it in the cooler, go out in his car and eat it. His teeth have stabilized. They're not moving around anymore in his mouth. And he doesn't have all the pain unless he eats something with salt in it, like lots of cheese with salt in it, salted cheese. Even if it's raw, it causes him some dental problems. In my situation, I was supposed to lose all of my teeth by the time I was 24. My mother lost hers by the time she was 32. My teeth, after chemo and radiation, my gums bled. All I had to do was go like this and it bled. My teeth were just hanging. I could just move any of them like this. They wanted to pull all of them. I said, don't you get near me. When I started eating the meat on a regular basis in 82, all of that disappeared. My teeth became stable. Now only once in a while will I have a certain detox because I had a lot of mercury fillings. And that mercury poisoning is a problem. So sometimes when I go through a mercury detox, I can tell it's a mercury detox because I'll start tasting the mercury and start getting nauseous. During that time, I may have a little loose tooth or a little abscess in the gum. And I should have lost all my teeth, 17 years ago. And the meat stopped it. I have all of my own teeth.
I just wanted a question. Is this more of a healing type of diet if you're in a problem situation, or is this a real maintenance, continued health situation that really just is good for all conditions at all times of your life?
Okay, through my experience, it's the latter. It's good for all conditions.
who are on this diet, that there are numbers? I'm sort of a scientist, so I like to see numbers.
That's good. Yeah.
Are there people who, it's just not testimony, but folks who have, like you, have been on the diet for a long, long time, that you can actually see changes over a period of time?
How much time?
5 years?
Oh, plenty. Probably around 3,000. Some as far back as 20 years. Like Awanza, who I mentioned in the book, she had 63 tumors in her body when she came to me. I was young into it. This was 81, right before I ate the poison mushroom, so I wasn't eating meat every day. And she came in the door, and she was only 35 years old, had a 13-year-old boy at home, a young husband, and she was just white, and her flesh hung like that. 35 years old, it looked like she was 60. Although she was a vegetarian for 14 years and her face looked young, but the rest of her body didn't, and she shook like this. When I opened the door, I thought, oh my God, I can't help this person. And it worked. So many times I've said, it will not work for this person. It will not work for this person, and it did. The only people now, and there's some people that have come and said, it's going to work for this person, and it didn't. All of those people had extensive medical therapies, chemo, radiation, or surgery of some sort. And finally, just this last year, I ran across some research by Hardin B. Jones, who was emeritus medical physicist and physiologist at Berkeley. And he concluded in the late 70s, or mid and late 70s, that from his research of cancer, the cases that refused, the individuals who refused any kind of therapy, lived an average of 12 years. Those who received either chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery, or all three, or any combination, lived an average of 3.5 years. So when they tell you that they are going to extend your life, they are absolutely lying, whether they realize it or not. And they're very miseducated. They're educated by the pharmaceutical industry who's selling a product. Most doctors really don't know the truth because they stay stupid purposely. They don't want to know. And this is published information. Hardin B. Jones went before quite a few court cases and through the legislature and testified on all of that document, which he documented for like 23 and 28 years for different particular systems, and said that medical treatment should be avoided at all costs. It'll shorten your life by 3 times. Yes?
So I'm thinking about toxins and chemicals in meat. Do you use organic meats? Do you think that's important? What do you think about that?
Organic meats is always better, because if the animal has had to use its fats to deal with toxicity, that means that that's not going to be available for us. Now, in my lab tests, when I was doing them about 13 years ago on the difference between organic meat and non-organic meat, found that in the organic meat, there was a lot more fats and proteins utilized. In the individuals who ate inorganic meats, there was a lot more fat combined with toxins. The body knew enough not to release those, not to digest it. It was almost as if the body passed it to the body whole, undigested. We were very impressed with that, and we ran that one 6 times in a 2-year period. So I would say that research was done starting 13 years ago and was ended about 10 years ago. So that research existed for the amount of pollution that was in those animals now. I mean then. What it is now and the from what I understand, the extent of pollution that's being fed back to those to cows now is increased probably by twofold. You know, back then it was probably 2%. Now it's like 8 to 10%. So going back and doing the tests now, I don't know how they would be. And my lab guy died last year, so to get somebody who's knowledgeable and who can go through and knows what to look for, I don't know where I'm going to find it. I have one fellow up in this area, Doug Haller, that's may be able to help. Brilliant scientist. He's trying to get a team of people together. So we're going to see. So I would say organic is always better, but I've been eating inorganic because I've been traveling around and camping in the sequoias.